And now for our next news special report.
And now in this special report, we uncover a tale of two Americas, divided not by geography, but by ideology. At the heart of this division, President Biden, in his recent National Prayer Breakfast remarks, calls for unity, imploring Americans to see each other not as enemies, but as fellow citizens. Yet actions speak louder than words. As we peel back the layers of political rhetoric, we find a starkly different narrative unfolding in Texas, where Governor DeSantis has just deployed a battalion of troops to the border. So this bold move, a direct challenge to Biden's policies, raises a question. Are we witnessing the defense of sovereignty or a deepening chasm within our republic? This report promises to dissect these developments with a critical eye, offering insights that mainstream narratives often overlook. And trust me, you don't want to miss our final thought, where we'll explore the implications of these actions on the fabric of our nation. So stay with us as we navigate through the complexity of unity versus division, and what it truly means to be an American in these turbulent times. Now, before we dive deeper into our investigation tonight, a quick word on a matter close to our hearts. Just as our nation grapples with challenges that threaten to divide us at our core, we face personal battles against an invisible enemy that's just as divisive. I'm talking about excess belly fat, known as the most dangerous fat lurking deep within. It threatens our very vitality, much like unchecked policies threaten the fabric of our republic. That's why, like many of you, I have turned to this revolutionary solution that's not just about shedding pounds, but safeguarding our health against these internal threats. With science-backed ingredients aimed at reducing fat storage, enhancing metabolism, and diminishing cravings, this isn't just another supplement. It's a call to arms for our well-being. And now, for a limited time, there's a 51% discount at trimwithgary.com, so protect your health, secure your peace of mind by visiting trimwithgary.com today. The link's in the description. So as we navigate through the turbulent waters of today's political landscape, it's impossible to overlook the dichotomy presented by President Joe Biden's recent actions versus his words. At the heart of our nation's discourse stands a man who, under the guise of unity, has arguably shown more division than any call for peace could mend. It's a story of contrast, of promise versus practice, and it's one that we're unpacking tonight. And following our discussion on the importance of addressing internal threats, it's critical to examine how external threats are managed, or in this case, seemingly exacerbated by the current administration. Now, Biden's remarks at the National Prayer Breakfast, where he invoked the spirit of unity and reconciliation, stand in stark contrast to his administration's own actions, particularly regarding immigration and his approach to Texas. Watch.
At a moment of deep division in our nation, President Lincoln said, "We are not enemies." He said, "We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies," he went on to say. I've long believed we have to look at each other, even in our most challenging times, not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. Scripture tells us the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. I believe that's our collective calling today.
I love when politicians start to quote scripture. I'm just waiting for them to burst into flames. Now, so this video encapsulates the essence of Biden's plea for unity, yet his administration's policies and rhetoric paint a vastly different picture. By labeling his chief political rival, Donald Trump, and his supporters as threats to the nation, Biden has not only polarized the political arena, but has arguably deepened the chasm within the American populace. Previously, Biden told Americans that if they wanted to fight the federal government, they would need something a little more than a gun. Remember this?
And for those brave right-wing Americans who say it's all about keeping America's independent and safe, if you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun. No, I'm not joking. Think about this. Think about the rationale we use. That's you.
Yeah, we think about that rationale, don't we? Now, it's this very dichotomy that leads us to question the sincerity and effectiveness of Biden's so-called call for unity. While on one hand, he speaks of seeing each other not as enemies, but as fellow Americans, his actions, particularly in regard to Texas, tell a very different story. The administration's attempt to initiate a conflict with Texas over immigration policies is a testament to a divisive agenda. This move far from promoting unity, seems to fuel the fire of division, setting American against American. So the narrative of division doesn't stop at immigration. Biden's comparison of Trump and his supporters to defeated Confederates during a campaign event starkly illustrates his divisive stance. Such comparisons do little but alienate a significant portion of the American populace, further entrenching the divide. Meanwhile, the situation at the border exacerbates the division. The surge of troops sent by Governor DeSantis to the Texas border in a bid to stop what he describes as an invasion highlights the stark contrast between state and federal approaches to immigration. While Biden preaches unity, states like Florida and Texas are taking matters into their own hands, directly challenging the federal government's policies. Take a look.
Well, it's not the first time he sent folks to Texas. Keep that in mind. Governor DeSantis said today that he's deploying members of the Florida State Guard and the Florida National Guard both to Texas. And the plan now is to help them assist Texas officials to try to get a better handle on the spike in undocumented immigrants right now that are crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. And this, of course, comes as the state of Texas continues to butt heads with the federal government. A dispute that stems from the Supreme Court's recent decision here to allow federal agents to remove razor wire that Texas recently installed along the border. Governor DeSantis argues that the states have the right to defend their borders regardless of what the federal government does, which is why he is sending Florida troops to Texas. And he says specifically sending the State Guard along with the National Guard because he said that's necessary for sovereignty. He says today that the federal government would have no control over our State Guard troops, unlike National Guard troops. Still, one state lawmaker slams the move, calling it a stunt, questioning the governor's focus following his run for president.
If Texas is helping to erect barriers, putting up razor wire, doing other things to keep illegal aliens out, I want to be helpful with them doing that. I don't want to be part of the federal government trying to tear down these barriers and let more people in illegally.
We should not be sending them to the border because this is not their job. This is not for Florida to get involved in, and we certainly have plenty of crises to deal with here at home.
So many didn't even really know about the State Guard, of course. That State Guard that Florida has, that Governor DeSantis is referring to, was actually formed as a reaction to COVID vaccine mandates just a few years ago. And we also note this, Florida's been sending members of the National Guard along with state law enforcement officers to Texas for several months now, in fact, since last May. So this development and deployment essentially doubles down on those efforts, and we'll see. I'm sure he'll be criticized some more for it, but he's getting a lot of support as well.
All right.
So this isn't just about border security or immigration, it's about the fundamental principles that govern our nation. The administration's approach raises questions about sovereignty, states' rights, and the very fabric of our national identity. The federal government's stance, particularly in trying to start a conflict with Texas, demonstrates not just a disregard for these principles, but a blatant attempt to undermine them. As we delve deeper, it's essential to understand the implications of these actions. The administration's efforts to paint a segment of the American populace as the enemy, to wage a metaphorical war on Texas, and to disregard the pleas for genuine border security, all while cloaking these actions in calls for unity, reveal a troubling strategy. This strategy, rooted in division, seeks to consolidate power by dividing the populace, a tactic as old as politics itself. Now, the irony of Biden's tears during the national prayer breakfast as he asked for a truce with Republicans can't be overstated. It's a poignant reminder of the power of rhetoric, and yet the ensuing actions betray the words. The contrast between the tears shed and the policies pursued underscores a fundamental disconnect between the administration's public persona and operational reality. So as we navigate these divisive times, it's crucial to remember the importance of actions over words. The true measure of leadership is found not in the speeches delivered, but in the policies enacted and their impact on the nation's unity and well-being. If you got value from this report, tap subscribe. My final thought is next. In the final analysis, the narrative unfolding before us transcends mere political squabbles. It touches the very core of what it means to be American. As we've explored the chasm between rhetoric of unity and the reality of division under President Biden's administration serves as a stark reminder of the challenges facing our republic. The actions taken, from attempting to ignite conflict with Texas to polarizing Americans against each other, do not merely reflect policy differences, they symbolize a deeper, more systemic issue. The question of unity versus division is not just Biden's to answer, it's a reflection of our collective identity as a nation. In a republic as diverse and complex as ours, leadership should strive to bridge divides and not widen them. So our final thought then is a call to all Americans to seek beyond the rhetoric, to demand actions that truly unite, and to remember that our strength lies not in our division, but in our ability to come together as one nation, indivisible. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. Now keep up your quest for truth with this next news report. And if you found our channel enlightening, join the millions who agree with you. Tap subscribe. Thank you for watching the Next News Network.